Okay, today we are dividing decimals. Now with dividing decimals, really, there's one thing you need to know, is that it cannot be done. We are not allowed to divide with decimals, at least not on paper. So if we have a problem, for example, 42 and 5/10, and I want to divide that into groups that are 1 and 5/10 in size. Remember, a fraction is a division problem. I can't divide by 1 and 5/10. If I had written down 42 and 5/10 divided by 1 and 5/10, or if I wrote it in the long division format, 1 and 5/10 into 42 and 5/10, all three of those are equivalent problems. They're all saying 42 and 5/10 divided by 1 and 5/10. Okay, but as I said, I can't divide. We can't divide into groups that are 1.5 in size. I can't do that using the math that we know. Calculator can do that because it knows the algorithms, but we can't do that on our own. So what we have to do is we have to change the problem. We're going to do an equivalent problem or get an equivalent answer by removing the decimal point. We're going to move the decimal point one space on our divisor to make it a whole number. But what you have to make sure you do is, if you're going to move it one space here, you got to move it one space here. So the problem now becomes 15 into 425. Okay. If I write it the other way, it would become, move it one space over, 425 divided by 15, or 425 over 15. Now we can do the division. 15 goes into 42 2 times. 2 times 15 is 30. 42 minus 30 is 12. Bring down to 5. 15 goes into 125. Eight times 5 is 120. We subtract, we get a 5. Then we add a decimal, just like we did if we were changing it from a fraction to a decimal. Bring the 0 down. 15 goes into 50 3 times. Get another 5, add another 0. So we have a repeating decimal. So we get 42 and 5/10 divided by 1 and 5/10 equals 28 and 3/10 repeating. Now let's do another problem. If we have let's say something simple. $32 divided by 8/100. So we're making groups that are 8/100 of a whole in size out of 32 total. So again, if I set this up in long division format, 32 goes inside, 8/100 goes here. Well, you might think, well, you can divide. What? You can't, because you cannot divide by a decimal. I have to change this to a whole number. This has to become a whole number. So I have to move it over 2 spaces. Well, if I move this one over 2 spaces, I have to move this one over 2. And remember, the decimal point on a whole number is after the ones place. So it starts there, move it over 2, and we have 3,200. So 8 goes into 3,200. Well, 8 goes into 32 4 times. 4 times 8 is 32. Subtract, we get a 0, goes into 0 0 times. Subtract, we get another 0, goes into 0 0 times. 0. So when we divide 32 by 800ths, we get 400. We can make 400 groups that are 8/10 in size out of 32. Okay. One more example. If we want to divide 36 and 4/10 by 8. If I do that in long division format, 36 and 4/10 divided by 8. Well, on this one, I don't have to change anything. The dividend, what you're dividing up, can be a decimal. The only time you have to change it is if the divisor is a decimal. And this time the divisor is already a whole number, so I do not have to move my decimal point. I simply do the division. 8 goes into 36 4 times. 8 times 4 is 32. Subtract, we get a 4. Move the decimal point up. Bring down the other 4. 8 goes into 44 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract. Get another 4, add another 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times. We get our answer. So 36 and 4/10 divided by 8 is 4 and 55/100. Okay. So when you're dividing, if the divisor is a decimal, that's what we're dividing by, is a decimal, you have to change it to a whole number. But however many spaces you move this decimal point is how many you move this decimal point. However many you move on the divisor is how many you move on the dividend. Okay? That's the rule for dividing.